invest. And so therefore, I thought it would be great to now host these things and put it on there in an educational forum that allows people to ask questions, that allows people to get the information they need. We're trying to go jargon specific so that if there is something in an industry that we are using jargon, we have the time and the availability to discuss it and dive deeper. This is a participation event. So please, I have the chat up here. Just chat your questions if you have any questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. Without further ado, let me introduce our guest here. So Kevin Walters is of the Costa Rica Investment Properties. Kevin is a great friend to Vantage, but not only to Vantage, but he's a great friend to me. I've had the fortunate pleasure of working with Kevin for five years. Yeah.
Yep.
And Kevin is one of the first relationships that I managed, and really has been a huge advocate for not only me, but a lot of the things that I've been trying to do here at Vantage. So I'd love to jump right into it, and let's just get started. So, as I mentioned, this is the knowledge series. The whole purpose of this is from educational purposes. No investments, no pitches, no deals, no nothing. But I want to start by talking about real estate. So a lot of clients aren't aware that they can use their IRAs to invest in real estate, let alone international. So people think that you're only forced to invest domestically, but that's not necessarily the truth. And that's why I brought Kevin on here today, as Kevin is the international guru of how to invest internationally. And I think we're going to have a great conversation. So let's jump right into it. Kevin, I'd love to tell the audience a little bit about, let me go to our slide here and get our slide up and running and share our screen so that people can see the slides.
And you can hear me okay as well?
Yep.
Perfect.
And then we will get this presentation.
Oh, that looks great.
Awesome. So Kevin, what I'd like to do is tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and we will just jump right into it.
You ready?
Yeah.
Well, hey, everybody. This presentation, actually, I'm technically in Costa Rica right now, and Daniel Ortega is, I think, in Scottsdale somewhere.
That is correct.
For the most part, I am from the Phoenix, Arizona area. Grew up in Tempe, and parents still live in the Gilbert Chandler area. I've been working with international investors in the real estate sector. Gosh, I probably want to say since 2006, 2007, mainly in Australia at that time. And then when the bubble burst in the United States and kind of like the bottom fell out, a lot of clients in Australia started asking me what was going on in the United States. I really had no idea. I was really concentrating on with my investors from either Australia, Hong Kong, or Singapore to purchase investment properties in Australia at that time. Started doing a little research, and then we'll fast forward everything to 2010, 11, and 12, where we had a lot of clients from the Australasia region purchasing property with great success in the United States. Fast forward it to 2013, and I was invited to come out to Costa Rica, check things out. Absolutely beautiful country. Throughout the whole part of Costa Rica, it's absolutely gorgeous. And like Arizona, because I can use that as an analogy, there are a lot of diverse places. If you're in the valley, most of it looks like desert. If you start going up north, you've got pine trees, and you've even got ski resorts up there. I'm not saying that we have ski resorts here in Costa Rica, but we have different color sands, different terrains, so on and so forth. 2013, we were not quite ready to start bringing investors here because we were still a few years behind what was happening in the US. As far as that, there were still a lot of properties. We weren't seeing a rebound. And I would have to say probably in 2013, the US was seeing a rebound, but we're not quite ready to do it yet. 2015 came back out here. I saw a lot of changes. 2016 and 17, that's when the economy started getting stronger here. I survived the test of time. We were doing some good property sales. And by that time, we had already been introduced to you, Daniel, and Vantage with educating people I don't want to say so much having people go straight into Vantage, but actually educating them on the process. And you can tell people as well, I've gone through the whole course with Vantage on for realtors on how to educate people in this realm, we would say. And now we're here in Costa Rica, and it is kicking goals. We've had several clients come and use Vantage's services. I think later on, you're going to be talking about that it may sound confusing. It's not. If you follow the steps that Daniel, I don't want to say Daniel and I have put together, but Daniel has put together with some advice for me where people may get confused. But now we're seeing great success with people purchasing property here in Costa Rica.
So that's great. And I'm happy that you're able to, have success and share those stories here with some of our investors, as I'm sure many of them are curious to know. So let's kick this off. I want to just jump right into our disclaimer here, just because we're always going to do this disclaimer. But Vantage does not provide any investment advice, endorse any products, or offer any investment opportunities. So we don't have anything for you to click and buy. We don't sell you. We don't say, hey, we think you should make this investment. All the information and the materials are for education purposes only. We strongly encourage you to seek legal advice, financial advising advice, tax advice before making any investment. So, Kevin, I want to ask you, the first question I want to ask today is, how do you fit? How does the Costa Rican Investment Properties fit into the real estate space?
Okay, well, that's a great question, because a lot of people, and I get introduced out here by friends that meet somebody maybe on an excursion or meet somebody out at dinner or something like that. Yes, I am a licensed broker. Well, sorry, not broker, real estate agent. I carry a license and I still carry it through Australia. But I would tend to be leaning more that we are a buyer's advocate. We are a buyer's agent. I'm a buyer's agent, just like Vantage. It's my responsibility to educate people before they purchase a property out here. So it's not kind of just like going, wow, okay, I'm going to sell you a property. What are you looking for? How much money do you have to spend? There's quite a few questions that I'm going to be asking the clients as well. Is it going to be their primary place of residency? Are they going to want to use it as a rental property prior to their retirement? Is it going to be a retirement property for them? So on and so forth. So there's a lot of things that I ask the clients as well, as opposed to just saying, great, I've got a client that wants to buy property. So I would like to look at us more as a buyer's agent or a buyer's advocate.
Got you. So everyone, as you can hear, it's not necessarily, again, when we talk about Kevin buying into selling you on buying into Costa Rica, he is more an advocate for you and educating you as far as to what are some of the things that you need to know when you're thinking about making an investment internationally. Whether you're doing it personally or whether you're doing it from your IRA, he's here as an advocate for you. So besides the allure of owning beachfront property, right, what are some of the advantages to buying real estate kind of internationally rather than in the US?
Well, I mean, this presentation is on April 8th, 2022. And there's a lot of crazy things going on in the world. My wife and I just came back from a wonderful vacation in Spain and Portugal that we did in February and early March. We have a lot of expats coming down here. We have a lot of people. The majority of the people that I'm working with and educating are coming from, well, let's go all the way up north, from the Toronto area. Why Toronto? And I know this doesn't fit into buying with an IRA per se, because that's out of the United States, but it is so gosh darn expensive and they can't get much there for what they can get here on a beach. And the slide that we're looking at right now, this is actually a true photo. To be honest with you, this is one that Mary took from one of her hikes at Mirror Mountain. So this is Jaco Beach right here. Why are North Americans coming down here? They're not sure politically what's going on. The United States is also still very divided with the rules and regulations of COVID-19. I'm not trying to bring that in or stir up anything. That's not what we're here about. But we have a lot of investors, gosh darn, from Phoenix. There's seasonally, there's direct flights. Houston, Dallas, Austin, Los Angeles, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Colorado, And even in parts of New York, there are direct flights to come down here. So we're getting a lot of people that are coming down for long weekends to stay in properties, or also use it as their second place of residency. I have several clients that don't even want to rent theirs out. They just come down here on their own. Yes, the majority of the clients are coming down to kind of have a property where it's paying for itself still while they're coming down here to visit as well.
Yeah.
The client said that you're educating through the self-directed IRA. No, they know that they're not able to stay in that property, but there's other properties that we can keep them in while they're visiting.
Got you. So what are some of the advantages to buying in Costa Rica? I know you mentioned a lot of people are, venturing down there with some of the easy access and portability as far as the direct flights. But what are some of the advantages to buying in Costa Rica? And I'll add, and in that, just do a follow-up as well. What are some of the disadvantages?
Yeah, well, it's a lot less expensive. I don't know where you're going to be able to find beachfront property in the world that you can start getting at, I'm going to say $250 a square foot, wow, where you're only a little over an hour away from the international airport. We are not a third world country. There are Teslas driving around. There's Porsches, Jaguars, Maseratis, but those are a lot less or more expensive. But as far as property and dwellings, a lot less expensive. Oh my gosh, especially what's going on today in the Phoenix area. The property prices are going crazy. You can get beachfront property, or if you want to be just about a mile back, gosh darn, you're getting great rental returns for purchasing properties at about $150,000 when you're only a mile away from the beach.
Wow. Wow. So what are some of the disadvantages? And let me ask you that. If I was an investor, what are some of the disadvantages, or what are some of the pitfalls I should be aware of?
Well, the pitfalls that a lot of people ask me would be, who's going to be watching over my property? Well, like when we had Australians purchasing in the United States, same thing applies here. Our property managers are watching over your property. Well, gosh darn, what happens if the air conditioning unit goes out? That's where your property manager comes in. They get a call right away. Like, for example, property manager just the other day, hey, Kevin, we need to get into access this property. Hey, go for it, Carlos. You're the property manager. You go ahead and set a time with the tenants that are staying in Daniel's investment property right now. Go ahead and get it set up with the tradesmen that work on the air conditioning units. And that was yesterday. And I've got to be honest, this is a true story. They were here at 8:30 in the morning to get that taken care of. I can guarantee you that's not happening in Phoenix.
Yeah, I can tell you that. No.
Yeah. So that would be the pitfall. And then who's managing the or who's looking over the property? That's would be one of the pitfalls. You've got to have, like any other rental property that you may have domestically in the United States, your property manager can be your best friend, or they can be your biggest nightmare. All jokes aside, you come here. What's the downturn? Well, you got to get on a plane and go back to Phoenix in the summer.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, and everyone knows if you're on this call and you live in the Valley, you know what a summer in Arizona is like. It could be, we've been fortunate enough these last 2 summers. What I don't think has been that brutal, but there's been some summers here that have been just absolute nightmares. So what I would like to do is I'd like to pause here, and I'd like to dive a little bit into the IRA aspect of this. And there's a reason and a method to the madness. It's because I want people to understand how you can take advantage of something investing internationally. And again, I'm not selling you to invest with Kevin. I'm just saying, in the event that you're deciding, hey, this is something I want to look into, how would I even go about doing it? I want you to know the steps of how you would go about doing it. So let me just briefly talk about what a self-directed IRA is. And first, let me just say, what is an IRA? Okay, so an IRA is simply, and it's identified in Internal Revenue Code section 408, which talks about the IRAs. It's based, and you can see the definition there. It's a trust. It's a trust that's been organized in the United States for the exclusive benefit of an individual and his or her beneficiaries. So really, it's just a trust. All right. Now, here's some questions that I want you to ask. How can my IRA buy a property? Or how can my IRA buy real estate outside of the country? Well, think about this. Ask yourself, can a trust buy real estate? Well, yes, a lot of people own real estate. I mean, their trust own a property. Can a trust lend money to other individuals? Absolutely. If you have a trust, it operates kind of like a business in certain cases. And lastly, can a trust obtain a loan and be leveraged? Yes. Some people have their IRA, their personal homes owned in a trust. They're still able to get refis. They're still able to do home equity lines of credit. So once you understand that the IRA is a trust, it's easier for you to grasp the fact that really it's just a trust. And if it can do those things, it can certainly do what we're telling you you can do. So, so now ask yourself, can an IRA buy real estate? Well, yeah, if an IRA is a trust, can an IRA lend money? Yes. Can an IRA obtain a loan? Yes. All of these things are possible through that, just by understanding that the IRA is ultimately a trust. So let's talk a little bit about some misinformation, because I think this is important. So IRAs were created back in 1974, and the first year you would have ever been able to contribute to an IRA would have been in 1975. And the initial contribution at that time was $1,500. So when you put your $1,500 in your bank, what are they doing? Well, they're probably going to put it in some form of, at that time, a CD, maybe a bond. But as the years have gone by, okay, more of our retail banks, so our Bank of America's and JP Morgan's and Wells Fargo's, they began to offer some of the same or step into some of the investment banks and offer those same services. So you start to see where Bank of America owns Merrill Lynch or has that division of Merrill Edge, and JP Morgan has JP Morgan Chase, or Chase has JP Morgan, and then Wells Fargo has Wells Fargo Advisors. These are all arms that allow their clients to invest in the stock market. So it's just kind of this perpetuation of misinformation has gone on, where it's like, okay, if I have an IRA, I can only invest it in this. I can only invest it in the stock market. Well, that's not true. It's just, again, people aren't aware that you can do that. So again, not only are we educating you on the ability to, the strategy to say you can invest internationally in real estate, we're also trying to make sure you understand and overcome some awareness that, well, you can also invest outside of the stock market. So we're here to tell you that stock market-based assets are not your only choice. One thing I also want you to remember is that a self-directed IRA is not a type of IRA, okay? I get a lot of clients that will fill out an application for us, and they'll call me and say, hey, Daniel, I'm looking at the application. I don't see where it says self-directed. And that's because self-directed IRAs, again, are not a type of IRA. It's simply just it's a marketing term. And it simply identifies who and how that IRA is going to be managed. So what I mean by that is these are the four main IRA types, okay? You have a traditional IRA, which a Roth, a SEP, which you see identified there as a simplified employee pension, and then a simple IRA, okay? Now your traditionals, SEPs, and simples, those are all tax deferred accounts, meaning they're going to grow. You don't pay any taxes on any of the growth until you begin taking distributions. Your Roth accounts are all tax-free, meaning you've already paid the taxes on it, and all of the growth is tax-free. So when you begin taking distributions, you don't pay any taxes. So one thing when we talk about the difference of two, you can have a self-directed IRA with a company like Fidelity and Schwab. You just have to invest in the assets that they have on their platform, which are stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and maybe some publicly traded REITs. On the alternative side, or the self-directed IRA side with Vantage, again, you're going to only open one of those traditional Roth or simple or SEP IRAs with us, but on the assets that you can custody, that's going to be your real estate properties, a private company, private lending situations, cryptocurrency, as well as precious metals. That was very big back in 2008, what we call the Great Recession. We saw a lot of people taking their money and investing in precious metals. Cryptocurrency now is becoming one of the sexier options because of just how popular it is, and people are becoming more enticing to want to invest in there. So let's talk about the prohibited transactions. And what I mean by that is, in 1974, when the IRS created IRAs, they didn't sit down and take the time to say, okay, guys, here's a list of all of the things you can invest in. It's just too much. There's a plethora of things that you can invest in. What they did was they just sat down and said, okay, what can't people invest in? And these are the two asset kind of classes that you can: a life insurance policy and collectibles. A life insurance policy, the reason you cannot is your IRA cannot be the beneficiary of a life insurance policy. That is the main reason, okay? And a collectible, and here let me tell you why you can't invest in a collectible. When you are using an IRA, okay, and you're with Fidelity, you're with Schwab or whatever, What you don't see behind the kind of scenes is that any investment that's on their platform that you invest in, they provide a value nonstop. That value is changing every single day. And that's why people can see the market. You log in today, you'll see what your account balance is today. You log in Monday, you just hope that it's not lower than what you saw on Friday, right? So, but on the alternative side, it's a little different. Since these assets aren't necessarily being traded on a day-to-day basis, what the IRS says is you are required to stay compliant to provide a fair market valuation once a year, okay? So it's very difficult to associate a fair market value with collectible items. Funny story, my uncle was the chief information officer for Sotheby's, which is one of the biggest auction houses in the world. He would help set up a lot of the information things at these auctions. So the networking at these auctions. So being in New York, I live in Arizona. Some days when he got out, I would be leaving work at 5:30. He's leaving work at 8:30. He'd call me, hey, Dan, you'd never guess what sold today at the auction. I'm like, what? He's like, it's the first ever stamp. First stamp ever in the United States. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. $10 million. Whoa, okay. Hard to own that in your IRA because how do you value that? How do you value that asset? How do you value a bottle of wine? How do you value a coin or a rug or a work of art? So again, you'll notice that there's an asterisk next to the coin, and that, as I mentioned before, you can own precious metals, and those metals have to meet a specific government fineness. And usually the broker that you work with will tell you, yes, we are, approved by, X, they meet the fineness and so on. Let's talk a little bit about who you can't invest with. And that's another thing is like, I get a lot of clients like, great, I want to take my IRA, I want to buy this rental property, I want to use it. Why this is important is because we're talking to Kevin, who again helps as an advocate for people who are going down to purchase investment properties in Costa Rica. Stepping out of the IRA side, most people, if they buy vacation properties that are investment properties in other parts of maybe outside of their state or in different parts of the world, they do it with the purpose of, I want to be able to use it. And so it's important to understand when you're using an IRA, you cannot, and here's why. Internal Revenue Code Section 4975 states that an IRA cannot engage in any transaction, either directly or indirectly, with anyone or anything considered related to the IRA. So everyone on the right side, the left side of the screen, where it says related parties, you are not able to transact with them. Now I'm going to use two words, transact and invest. Because words have meaning, words have power. Transact. You notice yourself and your spouse, your children, your parents, and your in-laws are the first set of individuals. So therefore, if your IRA were to buy a vacation rental in Costa Rica, you, your spouse, your children, I'm assuming if you have those, you're probably all going to go down there and try to visit, maybe your in-laws and your parents, you're not able to do that. Even if you say, I'm going to pay my IRA full market rent, well, you're transacting with your IRA. You can't do that. Well, even if you say, well, I won't pay my IRA, you're benefiting from it. You cannot do that. So let's talk about investing now, because we have a lot of husband and wives or spouses that come together to purchase real estate. Say Kevin and his wife both have IRAs, and they would like to buy an investment property in Costa Rica that they don't want to use, and they just want it to be an investment property. They can partner, since neither one of them own it individually, they can partner their IRAs together, or they can partner, say Kevin doesn't have an IRA and his wife does. Kevin can say, great, I will use money from my personal funds, use money from your IRA, we'll partner and we'll buy this property. So that is allowed. Now, on the right side of that list, I always call them fair game. You can buy, sell, rent, doesn't matter. So if you have an investment property and you want to rent it to your brother to go down to Costa Rica, you can, because that person is not considered related to the party. So another thing that Kevin and I have also talked about a little bit is, when we are educating individuals, and we talk about kind of broadening your circle and thinking, maybe it is, if you're someone and you have a brother or a sibling, and that person is like, man, I would love to take advantage of that. Well, great. Why don't you buy a property? I'll buy a property. And when it's time, I'll stay in your property, you stay in my property, and we're not breaking any rules. So that's kind of some of the ways I would say, not to circumvent, but ways for you to take advantage of being able to utilize the property, as well as help someone else, grow their IRAs as well. So start being a resource for yourself and your friends, and maybe partner with some of your friends and do that. So let's talk a little bit about the structure, all right? We're coming up to the end of kind of my portion, and we'll jump back into Kevin, but I want to talk a little bit about the structure of why this is important. So whenever you have an IRA, okay, let's just assume that you've transferred money from your Fidelity or Schwab into your IRA Vantage. We call this the direct IRA structure, okay? The reason for that, the IRA directly purchases the asset. Therefore, you notice all of the income goes back into the IRA. If you notice that left arrow on the left side goes back in. So that's rental income, sales of proceeds, dividends, or any interest. And any expenses for the asset will come out of the IRA. That could be either purchases, that could be property taxes, HOA fees, capital calls, maintenance, all of that happens. So if you're buying a property domestically, right? Great. You could just buy the property. That property will be where it says asset. You see the name of how it should be vested. Vantage for the benefit of John Smith. FBO means for the benefit of, I'm sorry. But Vantage, FBO, John Smith, IRA. And if it was a Roth IRA, it would say Roth IRA. If it was a SEP IRA, it would say SEP IRA. Whatever IRA it is, it would say that there. Traditional, you don't have to put traditional because IRA just implies traditional IRA. But if you wanted to buy a rental property in the United States, perfect. This is the structure you would go. You would buy it, the rental income would go back in, and the expenses would be paid out. Now, to buy international real estate, it's a little bit different, okay? And what that means is you have to have a specific structure, which you can use in both domestically and internationally, but you have to have this structure to be able to invest internationally. And that is what we call the IRA LLC, also known as the Checkbook Control LLC. Now, this process is when the IRA owner creates an LLC, which is ultimately the holding company in which the IRA will use to purchase and hold assets. Okay, so what that means is, again, money's come directly from Fidelity or Schwab into Vantage. You as the IRA owner would create an LLC where the IRA is the single member and you be listed as the manager. You personally or whoever you want can be listed as the manager. You would open a business checking account. And what the IRA is going to do is, instead of the IRA going out and purchasing the asset, the IRA is going to purchase the ownership of that LLC. So IRA owns that LLC. Now you, as the manager, will go out and purchase that asset. So if you notice, all of the money, how it flows, the money is going to flow in and out of that business checking account. So as the manager, you want to make an investment, you wire the money out of that business checking account. Any of the return of investments, either rental income, proceeds from the sale of the property, go back into that business checking account. Okay, that's very simple, very simple. And this is the structure that must have to happen if you want to invest internationally. Vantage or any other IRA custodian like Vantage cannot directly hold international real estate. Okay, so let's jump back and more information on the IRA LLC. I would just encourage you to sign up for our Set Your IRA Free presentation. The next one will be on April 20th. You can visit our website at www.advantageiras.com. Hit our, it's the knowledge tab, go on the event calendar, and that one is actually going to be the first one. We'll be doing a hybrid. We'll have it in person here at our office. And if you're unable to make it or you live elsewhere in the country, you can still join in virtually through Zoom. So I want to jump back in with you, Kev, and let's take a look at kind of like an old deal here. And just so our audience can see kind of the effects of how it works. So let's say, for all intents and purposes, I'm John Smith. I come to you. And let's say John used this from an IRA standpoint. Tell us a little bit about Lofts Del Mar.
Okay, so we've already, I don't want to assume, but we've already found the client, John Smith. He has decided that he is going to be purchasing an investment property with his self-directed IRA. And then from there, we start looking at different properties. Obviously, the majority of the people want to get a good return on the investment, which we will call ROI going forward. The properties that we're going to see here are true properties. These are properties that have been built, sold. I can give you the locations, everything. Lofts Del Mar, that's actually the name of the place. It's a fourplex. They're all studios with a little bit of a separate door. Private pool, purchase price was $385,000. Why there are no HOAs? Because there's only 4 units in there, and that's managed by the owner himself. The rent is anywhere between $85 per unit per night up to $264. People right now are going to say, what the heck? Why is there such a big difference? We're a very seasonal community here. And what I'll do is I'll go back to my analogy with spring training. How much were people paying for properties for a whole month in February and March? They sure as heck were not paying $1,500 a month for a 4-bedroom out in Peoria. They're probably paying $3,000 a month. So don't bring it back here. We're very seasonal.
That's a great, I love that analogy, Kevin, because Arizona too, for a lot of people that are watching, it's every year we get the college football. We're one of the bowl games for the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl. So every year you'll see, as well as every year we have the Waste Management Open, which is right around Super Bowl time. This actual year, we will have the Super Bowl in Arizona, we'll have the Waste Management Tour, and we will also have the college football playoffs. So around that time, your rental incomes, and I actually live in Glendale, which is right there way down from the stadium, I could rent my house out, depending on what teams are there, for usually between $10,000 to $15,000 for the week.
Yeah, so, no, absolutely. Yes. And this is a perfect scenario. So for the Venetians listening to this, or the Floridians listening to it, it's the same basic principle. You have a very high season between December, January, February, March, and when all the baseball players leave to go to opening day, which happened yesterday. Oh, by the way, great win for the Diamondbacks last night. So that's why you see such a huge difference in prices right there. And if someone's going to hit me up and say, Kevin, I really want to see the numbers for this, I can feel very comfortable to show anyone that's asking that this property will gross over $100,000 gross. Now, there's other things that need to be taken out as well. And then you're going to see the outgoings as property management. I don't want to say that the property manager so much is taking $1,200 per month, but this is all the outgoings. That's going to be your water, very inexpensive here, your electricity, the pool maintenance, the maid service that comes and goes all the time. So this one has an outgoing of about $1,200 per month.
Okay. So before we move on to this next one, which looks absolutely phenomenal. Actually, let's talk about this one. And then I want to talk a little bit about the structure of what an investment looks like. So let's talk about, is it Retiro del Sol?
Correct. This one should be completed. That there are 2 properties in there that the developer built to use it as display homes. They are not selling those. They reached out to me, let's just say 6 months ago, Kevin, we have 3 more left that we want to sell at $139,500. I had those sold in less than 2 weeks. Why? Because if you look on the top right, the way that I'm looking at it, they're duplexes. There's a studio on the bottom. So you're basically getting 2 rental incomes. There's a studio on the bottom, and then you go upstairs with a separate meter, and there's a 1-bedroom, 1-bath upstairs. So people are truly using these as very strong ROIs. So HOA, the Homeowners Association, is about $150 per unit per month. Now, when I say, now let me retrace that, per unit of 2, not each one where it would be 300, but the block that you see there, each one being 2 units, that would be a full unit. And again, anywhere from $80 to $140 per night. Why only $140 as opposed to the $285? It's just, it's a different condominium. Brand new concrete block construction, vaulted ceilings on the top floor. Outgoings, that's going to be your 150 plus your electricity and water.
Got you. Okay. So for our investors, we talked about 2 really good properties, but let's talk a little bit about kind of this structure, right? I'm an IRA LLC owner. I come to you. I say, you know what, Kevin? I want to buy, let's just use Retiro del Sol as an example. I want to use this. I want to use my IRA to buy this property. I've already opened my account with Vantage. I already have my IRA LLC. Boom. What are the next steps?
The next steps are as simple as purchasing a property in the United States. So you've got everything set up, but then what we will need to set up is, as you've been educated by Daniel Ortega at Vantage IRAs, we're going to need to make sure that we set up a corporation for you in Costa Rica as well. Now, remember, it's not for you because you're the manager of the property. So then I have to try to explain, and Daniel, you can back me up on this, anything that's going on, the IRA that is purchasing the property, that manager is going to be in full contact with you and also with the property lawyer down here as well. So okay. It's an open book. Everyone knows what's going on. And then we can also open up a corporate bank account, just like you would. And your flow chart really explained that well. So, okay, we can get the money down. Perfect. Then we work on doing a purchase agreement, which will be in English. So no one gets scared. It will be in English. If it's not, then we have the property lawyer do the due diligence on the property. Again, just like the US, if it's an older property, we're obviously going to suggest that we do a builder inspection. Obviously, I'm going to try to get the seller to pay for that, but it's just going to be a negotiation back and forth. But again,
so it's very similar to buying property here in the US.
Very similar, with the exception that just as long as people have their head around it, that Kevin Walters is not purchasing it, the IRA is purchasing the property. Gotcha. But that's already been mentioned to them.
So you mentioned being an advocate in the beginning, right? And what I like to use about Vantage when people ask me, they're like, Daniel, you can't, they're like, can you provide advice? And I say, you know what? No, I'm not a financial advisor. I have no fiduciary responsibility. But what I am is a guide. I have resources that you don't have to use, but if you are, coming up against a wall with, let's just say, for example, creating the LLC, well, we have resources here that can assist you in creating an LLC. Oh, you know what, Daniel, my bank is not allowing me to open up a business checking account in the name of the IRA. Don't worry about it. We have resources to assist you. We understand how niche this industry is. And so we've made sure we've done our due diligence to find people to help our clients. Have you done the same? So you're an advocate. Have you, someone comes to you and said, hey, I need a property manager. I need an attorney. I need all of that stuff. Do you have those resources to kind of help put a client's mind at ease?
100%. And we do not say that you have to use Daniel Ortega as your property manager. We suggest 2 or 3 people. Again, I don't want to say that we're in bed with anyone, property lawyer, banker, accountant, or property manager. We want you to make that choice, but then obviously it's in a foreign country. Your IRA is purchasing a foreign investment, and they're going to seek advice from us that are on the ground. And just so people know, I am a permanent resident. I am not a citizen of Costa Rica. I am a permanent resident. I've been living here permanently since June 2015. So in June, it'll be 7 years. So I'm not going anywhere. So it's not like you're going to be, not like your IRA is buying a property and boom, Kaiser Soze gone.
That's you took that right from me, because one of the questions I was going to ask you here was, if I'm an investor and I'm nervous, this is my retirement money. This is, especially from an IRA, I'm buying an asset that, yes, maybe if I bought a house in Ohio, I can't necessarily, and I live in Phoenix, I can't necessarily drive by, but I could always get on a plane and go see that, and that's domestic. How do I know that my property or my investment is safe? What are the safety parameters put in place to protect me as the investor? Or how do I protect myself?
Yep. So just like you get on a plane from Phoenix to Ohio, you're going to have a heck of a lot better time coming down here and checking out how the lay of the land works. And I highly suggest to anybody that is going to be purchasing a property in Ohio from Phoenix, if you're going to be buying a property from Glendale to Tucson, go down and see the property. If you're going to be purchasing, come down here, see it. I will pick you up. I will show you the good, the bad, and the ugly. Just like we did with the Australians coming into the Phoenix area between 2009 and 2013. It is very important to me, as I know it is to you, that we do not want anybody going in blind. We want them coming in eyes wide open so they can see it with their own eyes.
So from us, on average, I can tell clients right now, on average, to get the IRA open, money transferred, IRA LLC, done, money in the IRA business checking account. On average, 30 days. That's from the IRA side. Now, how long is the process? Because some of this stuff could be moving kind of at the same time. While the LLC is kind of being formed, they could be looking for a home. But on average, you know, if a client came to you, like let's use that first example, I'm ready, I have my money in an IRA LLC. How long is the process to go on a contract, find a property, and buy it?
You've already come down here, you and your partner, you and your wife, you yourself as an individual have come down and you've like, okay, I really like this area. Here's what I'm looking to spend. Here's the return on the investment that I would like to get. Obviously, we're not going to promise anybody anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if the money can get sent down, we're on a Friday right now. The money can be internationally wire transferred from one day. It's going to take probably 3 or 4 days for it to get it down here. Just bureaucracy. It's no big deal, but it gets down here. We can close on a property within a week, but let's just use a perfect scenario.
Wow.
Let's say it's going to be now we're going to get to the nitty gritty. Close on the property, but be registered in Costa Rica. That's going to take another 2 weeks, but it's already purchased. It's just that your name or that corporation name is going to be owning it. And then that will be through the National Registry of Costa Rica. So we could
that's the title side. That would be like if we were doing it domestically, that would be the title side. Okay.
And correct. And we make sure that we do the due diligence as well to make sure that there's no liens against the property that the IRA may be purchasing. Your question was how long? Anywhere between, you know, it depends on how we want to write the contract, but it can close as quick as 7 days. I like to use 30 days. And if it happens before that, that's great. If it's going to take a little bit longer, this scenario, you said that you've got the IRA already set up, but if it's not, we just make sure that we stay in constant communication with all parties, the seller, the property lawyer, the bank, the property manager, and the people on your side at Vantage.
Okay. So to our audience who may be saying, hey, this is great, you know, let me give you another reason why these alternative investment strategies are good for you. Is one of the benefits of using non or qualified money is that there aren't any tax implications. So when you buy a rental property domestically, you know, and you purchase the property, let's just say you bought a $100,000 rental property, appreciation happens, you turn around, you flip it you sell it for $200,000. Well, that $100,000, if you were to not own that property in the IRA, would be considered capital gains. Depending how long you've had that property is going to be subject to what kind of capital gains you pay, whether it's short-term or long-term. In an IRA, you don't have to worry about that. The IRA removes the capital gains issue, and that money goes back into your IRA, $200,000, so your $100,000 worth of profit. Same would apply to Kevin in this case. The IRA owns this asset. So again, all of that rental income is coming in all tax deferred, or if you own it in a Roth, tax free. There are some tax situations that you may have, like a rental tax. Even in the United States, there may be a rental tax you're required to pay. The IRA or the asset being owned by the IRA doesn't absolve you for that. So Kevin, what are some of the tax implications domestic or internationally that a client would want to be aware of?
Well, obviously my disclaimer would be to make sure that you check with your accountant on both sides. We do have an accountant here. Well, we have several accountants here that work with our clients. The money that you are making here, a profit, it obviously, like any other country, they're going to want to see their clip. Even though this property is tax deferred through an IRA, Costa Rica is still going to want to see their little chunk. Mm-hmm. Here's where it gets really exciting, though. You have to meet a certain threshold, just like the United States, before you have to pay taxes. What that exact threshold is right now, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot and say exactly what it is, but what I can tell you is up to $100,000, you're at 10%. But that may not start until like $30,000 and that's profit. Anywhere between $101,000 and $200,000, you're paying 20%. And anything over $300,000, gosh, if you're making over 100,000 on a property that I sold, you better get your butt down here and buy me a nice steak dinner, because that's just that is just anywhere. That's just great. But yeah, they make it very simple. 10% is up to $100,000, 20% between 101 and 200,000, and anything over 300,000 is 30%. But again, where that actually comes into play, we'd have to check with our accountants again.
Got you. So let me ask you this too, as we wrap up here. I want to leave some time for some questions and some answers, but rental income, right? You mentioned the rental income, $100,000. How does that money get from Costa Rica, my tenant, paying me, and then me getting that money here in my IRA?
Back to your IRA. Well, remember, you're going to have a business bank account here.
Yep.
Okay. So those are the strategies that you have taught us to do. So the money can stay in that business bank account. If that money needs to come back up, it needs to be redistributed through the funnel from your business bank account here to your business bank account in the United States.
Gotcha.
Keep it.
Okay.
Keep it here. I like to tell people, make sure that you have at least $5,000 in your business bank account down here, just in case there's anything that you need fixed in an emergency.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, for our audience and viewers here, I want to let you guys know, having an asset owned in an IRA LLC, and you reach that retirement age, you never write yourself a check anyways. So it is a little bit of a tedious process in the sense of you have to have your money sent from Costa Rica to your business checking account, and then to your business checking account here to Vantage for us to write you a check. But again, I'll be honest with you, if you're making $100,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 a year, you're not making that probably in the market. So I guess the chance of making more money is a little more steps to do so. So what I'd like to do now, Kevin, I want to thank you so much. This was great. As always, this is exactly how I know we planned it. So I'm excited for that. But what I'd like to do is kind of open up the room here for any questions, whether it's on the IRA side or whether it's on the international investing side. And then I want to, again, thank everyone for attending. And I'll read off the questions if anyone does have a question here, Kevin.
Absolutely. A question that I get quite a bit, maybe to start off the party, get going, is, gosh, it sounds like it's difficult to do. It's not confusing to you and I, because we've done it so many times with mutual clients. But with the checklist that you and I have created for these people, if you follow that checklist and go step by step, and there's a few things that you can do while the other one is taking place, but following the checklist, it is actually very simple. If you're not following the checklist, then you're going to get frustrated. Don't blame me. Don't blame Daniel.
Well, I will say this too. So the one thing about whether you're choosing to invest internationally or not, the one thing I will, and we have our first question here, which I'll ask in a second, but the one thing that I always try to educate clients is that investing alternatively is an administratively laden process. Unlike the stock market where you can log on, click and buy, it doesn't work that way. However, don't be discouraged by the administrative laden aspect of this, because I'll tell you, we've had clients, or there's been clients, I shouldn't say we, but there have been clients that have, before Facebook went public, before Uber went public, the only way you would have been able to take advantage of that in an IRA would have been through a company like Vantage. Now, if you were to invest in Facebook back in before 2012 when they went public, and you bought a ton of shares, and remember, when they went public, they were selling at $78 a share. So I'm sure you didn't pay $78 a share there. You would have done really, really, really well as you wouldn't have paid any capital gains tax on any of the proceeds you would have made if you chose to sell. So that's one thing. E-Trade is another great example. Not E-Trade, eBay is another great example. Back in July of this 2021, June or July of 2021, there was a Peter Thiel article that came out where he has a $5 billion Roth IRA, and people were losing their minds and trying to figure it out. How could that be? How can you only contribute $6,000 to an account but have $5 billion? So really what he did was, he was a private equity guy, made a ton of money in his Roth account, invested in eBay, bought shares when they were really, really, really low. And when eBay, blew up and PayPal, because they bought, I believe eBay bought PayPal or PayPal bought eBay, but all of that, he benefited from it. And all of that is tax-free. Now it's a loophole for him, and he's already uber rich, but still, I mean, that's it's one person doing that. So I want to get to some of these questions here. First question here: do you have financing, or are these all cash deals? So that's a great example. I actually asked this question about a week and a half ago with one of our non-recourse lenders, because you can get a loan in an IRA if they would lend internationally. Now, it's really hard to lend internationally because of some of the due diligence that they will do on the project, and you can't just ultimately go and get a loan from a normal bank when you're using an IRA. Majority of the clients that Kevin and I have supported or have worked have done all cash deals, and I'll tell you why. Because the cash purchase price hadn't been exuberantly high. So most clients usually have about 200 to 250, which is the average of IRAs in the United States. And if they're buying 139 or 140, 150, even a $200,000 property, it isn't all of it. So unfortunately, financing is not available. The majority of those are cash deals.
Okay. So with that, to add to it, Ed, yes, there are options. You can do seller finance down here. The interest rates are going to be a little bit silly, maybe a little bit painful, and they're going to scare you. If I say that they can be negotiated anywhere between 5.5% and 9%, but I make sure that it is principal and interest. So there can be that. You can also do the scenario, say that your IRA does not have a lot of money in it. Say you have $75,000 in there, it's a $150,000 property. You could put your $75,000 of IRA money, which is 50% down, and then use the seller as your non-recourse bank.
You took it. I was literally going to say that is an option which a lot of people will do, is they will do a seller carryback and use the seller as their lender, which is non-recourse technically. So,
and it doesn't necessarily always have to be 50% either. No. We can get into seller properties as low as 25 or 30%. So I hope that answers that for you as well.
And for anyone interested in what that looks like in domestically, I will ask that you, again, sign up for our Set Your IRA free workshop. We talk a lot more about what the non-recourse aspect looks like and give you some examples on that as well. Someone had asked if one structures the IRA in the suggested way, and I'm assuming they mean the IRA LLC, and later decide that I don't want to invest, how difficult is it to back out to a regular IRA? So again, not difficult at all. However, if you own a international real estate, you're not able to back out because there's no way that we can custody you. So if you decided to, say for all intents and purposes, buy a rental property or investment property in Costa Rica, and then say, you know what, I don't want this IRA LLC structure, we're not able to back it out, because then unless you were to sell that property and then bring the cash here, then you're not able to do it. Domestically, very easy. If you use the IRA LLC to buy a property in, let's just say, Ohio, and you turn around and you're like, I really don't need the IRA LLC portion of it, it's very easy. You're just going to retitle the deed to show that it's not the LLC that owns it, but it's the IRA directly. So very easy.
I love this next one. You better be recording it, buddy.
Yes, I am recording it. I'm working to get this uploaded to our website. So what I will do is, instead of having clients have the ability to click and register, it will be click here to view our most recent workshop. So my goal is to get more traffic to the website so people are aware of a lot of the other options that we offer. And then you'll be able to view it up for the 1 month. So in the month of April is as long as you'll be able to view this, and then it'll no longer be available after the month of April. But Kevin and I are working diligently to continue to do these. And I believe we're right now, maybe we'll do this maybe bi-monthly. So we'll do one in April, and then we'll do one in June for people that weren't able to attend. And as it grows traction, we'll continue to do it.
And you can get a hold of either one of us at any time. I'm sure my information is at the bottom as well. I charge.
I was going to say, Kevin, at the end of this, actually, why don't you go ahead and in the chat, put your contact information in the chat just so people can have it. Okay, what are the options for handling your foreign assets upon the event of a death? Oh, great question. Okay, so what happens in the event of a death? So initially, first, because the IRA, we would have to start domestically first before it could and I'll let Kevin talk about the international side. But the domestic side of this is that you would, on every IRA application, you would list, it has the option to list the beneficiary. So in the event that something were to happen, let's just use me an example. If something were to happen to me, I would list my wife as the beneficiary. Something happens to me, then my wife and Vantage would work together to reassign the IRA into that my wife's name. At which point the LLC would then be retitled to her name. Now from there, I would just encourage that person to contact Kevin to see what naming things. But I will say this, I don't think we would need to do anything internationally if it's owned by the LLC, unless you're talking about the checking accounts and so on.
Correct. I was going to mention that as well. A kind reminder that the flow chart is that there's a business bank account set up that manages the business bank account down here or anywhere else that you're going to be buying. If you're buying in Lisbon, wherever it may be, that business bank account. So at the end of the day, and we're going to have to do a little bit more studying on it, but if you are having a property down here, that business bank account is associated with the Vantage business bank account as well. So I see that being flow through pretty easily, especially with the lawyers that are drafting up the purchase agreement.
I don't foresee it being something that's very difficult. One thing as well, I know a lot of people always ask and they say, well, can my IRA, can I list my trust as the beneficiary? Absolutely. So your trust can be listed as the beneficiary of your IRA in the event of your untimely death. That everything now is owned by the trust. So you'll have an executor of the trust or a trustee, but they will be responsible for managing the IRA LLC at that point. So when you begin taking R&Ds or required minimum distributions, some things, that is where Vantage in the conversation we're going to have is a little different. And that's where we're probably going to have to get some attorneys involved, just because we want to make sure that you're aware that even if you put it to a trust or to a beneficiary, there are time limits as far as to how long you can continue to have the asset when it's a beneficiary IRA, especially one that's already taking an R&D. So a little high level for this, but I love where we are. Again, Kevin, I love your time that you took today. I believe that a lot of people got a good value from this. And I look forward to, again, obviously you and I talk a lot more, but if anyone has any additional information or I want to ask Kevin questions about international real estate, again, we're not directing you to go invest with him. We're just saying he's a guru, he's a resource, use him. He's got a lot of knowledge, and he'll be able to answer any questions that you might have.
And I appreciate that. And again, I'm not here. What's more important to me is educating people on how to purchase a foreign investment property. And if you're looking at a different country, I'm going to give you on my website, you can click onto it. There's a newsletter, and then there's also an ebook. And those principles that are taken from the newsletters that are being sent out or the ebook, those principles can be used in other parts of the world as well.
And that's a great point, because I would love for everyone to go to Vantage and also sign up for our newsletter, because that in the newsletter is where we put educational articles that either myself or our CEO writes, as well as you will be notified of all of the upcoming new education workshops that will be offered through this knowledge series. So you'll be able to see in June when the next Kevin Walters Investing in International Real Estate is taking place. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. It's been great. And we're on a wonderful Friday. It's not bad to start on the inaugural one. Kevin, you did a phenomenal job as always, my friend. And everyone, I hope everyone has a great weekend.
And thanks for the great questions. Really good questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. As always, my friend, have a cerveza for me, and you have a wonderful weekend.
Okay. Off to the Masters. Bye.
Take care.